are now. The prince began looking at me with such curiosity that if I don't satisfy you may well get angry with me. No, I'm joking. He quickly I was a smile there. There is all the children, and I was trudging all the time only with the children. They were the children of that village, a whole band who went to school. It wasn't I who taught them. Oh no, but they had a schoolmaster to read the ballet, or perhaps I teach them, but more just by being with them, and I spent all my 4 years that way. I didn't need anything else, and I told them everything. I didn't hide anything from them. Their fathers and the relations got angry with me because the children finally couldn't do without me. They kept yelling at me, and the schoolmaster finally even became my worst enemy. I could scold me. I'm what they were afraid of. A child can be told everything. I was stuck by the thought of poorly grown-ups and the children, and even the fathers, mothers, and even the own children. Nothing should be concealed by children on the pretext that they're little and it's too early for them to know. What a sad and unfortunate idea. And how well children themselves can see that their fathers consider them too little and unable to understand anything while they understand everything. Grown-ups don't know that the child can give extremely important advice, even in the most difficult matters. Oh my God. When it's for you, I deceive these birds because nothing is in them. And you with the village and many with a certain courage. Simply made me at the same time shaking his hand and wondering how it was the children understood everything. In my opinion, it wasn't insane. He just suffered terribly, that the whole of his illness. And if he knew what our children became for him in the end. But I tell you the better patience later. Now, I'll tell you how it started. The children disliked me at first. I was so big and always grumpy. I know that I'm bad looking, but finally there was an act for foreigner. The sons at me, and when they spied and kissing Mary, I only kissed her once. No, don't laugh. The prince hastened to stop, and the smiles of the listeners. There was no love in the here. There wasn't any love here. If you knew what was from a village, her mother was an old woman, and her patented off with the permission of the village's authorities, and she was allowed to say laces, thread, tobacco, soap, and from this wound at the lowest prices ever since. She was ill, her legs were swollen, and so she always sat in her place. Mari consumption for a long time, but she kept going from the house to the floors, washing laundry in sleeping yards, tending a castle, and a French traveling salesman seduced her and took her away. But after a week, he abandoned her on the road and quietly left. She came home begging on the way, all dirty rags, her shoes torn. She covered in sores and her hands swollen and chapped. She'd never been pretty anyway. Her eyes were gentle, kind, and innocent. She terribly attacked him, and once before then, she suddenly began to sing over her work. I remember that everybody was surprised and started laughing. Mary began to sing, "What?" And she was so terribly established and kept silent forever. People were still nice to her, and then for her and anyone. How cruel about that. What harsh emotions have it all. Her mother was first to greet her and hold her up to disgrace, ran to look and see the whole children came running of the old women, fathers, old men, children, women, girls, everybody. His whole ambition was to become a great preacher. Turned to them at Mary, and here is one who caused the respectful woman's death. Here she stands before and dares not to look up, because she's marked by the finger of God. There she, barefoot and ragged, an example to the lose of virtue, who she is her own daughter. In more than sing men and imagine, almost everybody liked the meanness, but there's a particular thing they cared. There's the children stepped in because by how this happened, I wanted to do something for my tea. Badly needed money, but I never had a penny while I was there. I had a small diamond pin and a silver fork and pencil, and he went from the village to a trading in old clothes. He gave me 8 francs and thought it was a good 40. I spent a long time trying to meet my real love. We finally met outside to the village in the hedge of the own path to the mountains behind a tree. And there I gave her 8 francs and told her to be sparing of them because I won't have any more. Then I kissed her and said, I didn't think any bad intentions. I kissed her not because I loved with her. I felt sorry for her, and from this day I have never regarded guilty, but I was informed to comfort her, then to assure her she won't regard herself as low before everyone. They sometimes stood and listened through. They kept up their abuse and told them how important he was. And then they stopped talking. I didn't hide anything from them. I told them everything. They listened very curiously and soon started to feel sorry for her. Sometimes started greeting her kindly when it meant custom there, because when you meet somebody, rather you leave them, or because not just to balance a good day. And after I said that I could be releasing, so I could tell them afterwards. In 3 years after I told them all sorts of things, when everybody accused me of talking to them like grown-ups without hiding anything, implied that I was shameful to lie them to them. I knew every bad week. While with away from them, it would be in a bad way. You had to remember yourself as a child, and they didn't agree. 2 weeks before Raj died, Pastor gave his sermon on all the children, and on my side told them about with himself much of the songs. The pastor set one on the window, learned all about once it's done. And there began out on the children, and she became terribly frightened. Beat her, but they ran in the secret to see her. Waiting for balloons for almost half-mile village, she brought her treats and she rushed headlong home. I come from and I also didn't want to be seen. As soon as it appeared, Motherwood gave a start and turned right to kiss my hands. No, while I was sick there, she tumbled what true and several times a crazy person's terrible and I will rapture. Sometimes the children came with me on their occasions. They usually stood not far away and about guarding us something or somewhat. And they were extraordinarily pleased with that. When we laughed again, she was remained alone, wrestling with, as before her eyes closed, was a rock. Okay.